All right, so today I want to talk about another quote from the great Thomas Sowell. Now, he says, "Of all ignorance, the ignorance of the educated is the most dangerous. Not only are the educated people likely to have more influence, they are the last people to suspect that they don't know what they're talking about when they go outside their narrow fields." And there's many very key points that he brings up within this. For starters, I would point out is that the value of a college degree is becoming less and less valuable, which is the first problem, is that you have people that have degrees, that the problem is that there's so many other people that have degrees. And not only that, the other problem is that a lot of these jobs, you don't need a degree. Like it's like I've said so many times, but in the future, nobody is going to, or at least hardly anyone's going to get a degree in a lot of fields that people are currently getting a degree. Like if you work in the business field, the tech field, like no one's getting a degree in those fields in the future because you don't need one. It makes no sense whatsoever. Like, and I mean, just think about it from this perspective. Um, and it especially makes sense if you need to take out student loans or you need to work to put yourself through school, which is most people. Like most people need to work part-time or full-time and or full-time in the summer, or even during the year, to pay for their schooling, or they take out student loans, or maybe both. Um, and here's why it doesn't make any sense: is that these jobs don't actually require a college degree. I mean, you look at many of the top people in the business field, and especially in the tech field, they're not people with college degrees. I mean, a lot of these people are high school dropouts. Like, was it Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, or I mean, one of these guys, these literal like, I mean, you look at Mark Zuckerberg was a college dropout. Like, a lot of these people are they're one. I mean, one of the really really big names was literally a high school dropout. So the idea that you need a college degree for this is pointless. The only reason that, or at least the main reason why people think you need a college degree for a lot of these jobs. And here's the thing too, people will twist my words and saying, oh, you think nobody needs it. No, I'm not saying that. If you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, stuff like that, yeah, you need secondary schooling. But I'm talking about jobs where there's no real underlying reasons why you need it. Like if if someone's working on your, like let's say someone's you're a business, someone is selling you, your 10, 20, whatever, how many computers you need and programming them so you can run your business. Why in the world would you care if they have a college degree? And I mean, people say, oh, I would care, but here's the reality is that in the future, or at least I mean even right now too, but would you want someone who has a college degree, who has no previous jobs that he can point to of going well, he has no reviews of his business, none of that kind of stuff? Or would you want the guy who has, all 5-star reviews, great customer service, great pricing, the friendly guy, all that kind of stuff? Which one would you prefer? Well, everybody's going to prefer the guy that's done a great job in the past, and you don't care that he doesn't have a college degree. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like it's the same stuff too with let's say nutritionists or something like that. Like let's say you're competing, and do you care if someone has a degree in nutrition? No, you care if has this guy coached people to win competitions and to win their championships and all that kind of stuff in the past. No, you really don't care. You care about his pedigree. Again, like nobody cares about that kind of stuff. Like it really makes no sense. Like if you're someone who has run political campaigns, do you care if someone has a degree in political science or anything? No, you don't. Again, you have one guy who has a political science degree. He's never ran a campaign before, or he has ran a campaign before, but he's never won. And you have a guy who doesn't, and he's ran several campaigns and he's won every one of them. Well, which one are you going to hire? You're going to hire the one that doesn't have a degree and has won several. Again, so the idea that you need degrees for these fields is, or a lot of these fields, obviously not all of them, is absolutely beyond insane. And here's the other thing too, is that I constantly see people nowadays, because a lot of them are in my age bracket, that are complaining, oh, well, my school's having online classes, but they're still raising, or at the very least keeping their tuition the same. How terrible. Well, the reason they're doing that is very simple. It's because, for starters, you refuse to acknowledge that these teachers are overpaid. And number two, you refuse to acknowledge that the average degree is overrated. The only way that prices are going to come down, um, I mean, for starters, the only way prices are going to come down is if the government doesn't let anybody get a student loan. I mean, that's the big thing. But the other thing is when people admit that college degrees aren't as valuable as they are. And this is the thing, too, is that because colleges and society as a whole has brainwashed people into thinking that degrees are so important that there's no way to get ahead in life without a degree, colleges have caught on to that and be like, hey, we're going to keep raising tuition consistently until, and they're going to keep raising it and keep raising it until people recognize that, hey, this is pointless. Why am I even doing this? And then that's when people will finally realize, and this is the problem, is that nothing's going to change when it comes to the whole tuition cost until people realize that for most people it's pointless what they're doing. So anyway, um, and here's the other thing he points out too, is that there are people that are more likely to have more influence, and that is one of the big problems too, is that you have these professors, you have these teachers that have a ton of influence over people, and they're largely clueless, even a lot of times about the topics they're specifically educated on. I mean, you look at the average, you look at people with economics degrees. I mean, I've seen studies that show that people with economics degrees are narrowly more educated than the people without economics degrees, um, when it comes to economics. So, I mean, this is the big problem too, is that, I mean, I've taken multiple courses, college level courses on economics, and I've learned far more um, off, reading books, personal books, listening to podcasts and stuff like that, like far more. Like I've taken 2 courses on economics at the college level, and I've learned far more reading books and listening to podcasts. So that is one of the many problems. And here's the thing too, is that whenever the topic has came up, I never, ever, ever, ever bring up the fact that, oh, have you taken college level courses on economics? Well, no, I never bring that up. But what I do bring up a lot of times is the amount of books and podcasts and stuff like that I've brought up. That is something that I do sometimes bring up. But again, citing your education when you're in a debate is almost always an admission of losing. Like almost always an admission of losing. Because if you were winning, why in the world would you have to resort to citing your credentials? Like it doesn't make any sense. And here's the other thing he points out too, is that they're the last people to suspect they don't know what they're talking about when they go outside their own narrow fields. And this is one of the many problems when it comes to people. And I mean, I talk quite a bit with people in person and especially online, is that people with degrees, and I mean, you can often tell because you can tell by what, people are, they're either flat out in school, or they're in fields to where it's impossible to get the job they have without a degree. Um, so I mean, you can just tell. And there are people that like they have degrees in like education or some garbage like that. And I mean, not that that's, I think you're terrible if you have an education degree. I'm just pointing out that you're not terribly um, knowledgeable when it comes to politics and stuff like that when you if you have an education degree. Um, but the point being is that people think that, oh, I have a degree, therefore, and you don't have a degree, therefore, if we have a debate in anything, then I win automatically. Like it's just that level of insanity, and that's kind of what I wanted to point out today. And again, Thomas Sowell is so right about it. Again, it's the one thing I pointed out is that in the future, I'm not saying for sure, but I think it's incredibly likely that much less people will go to college, because eventually people are going to have to realize that, hey, this is pointless. Like, and the other thing too is that why do you need to get a degree? I mean, if you're someone that, let's say you want to be an accountant, well, here's what would happen. Here's what's going to happen in the future, at least most likely. You're going to get a job in an accounting firm right out of high school or whenever you want to get the job. And here's the thing too, is that employers want to be able to be selective about who they hire, especially for the higher paying jobs. And um, they can't, because there's so much fear nowadays of not hiring someone because they're a woman or they're black, and not because people are racist, just because their physical reality is that um, the best people should be hired for the job. And the problem is that when the best people are hired for jobs, there's going to be a disparity between blacks and whites, and white and women and men. There's going to be a disparity if you hire based on best person for the job. And that is one of the many reasons. So the employers want to be able to discriminate in some way, and how they do that is be like, okay, we require you to have a degree, and that is how they discriminate, rather than just hiring the best person for the job. And here's how it would go too: is that you would get the job at the accounting firm, and I mean you would do it one of two ways most likely. You would either um, work for free for X amount of time, and there would be a contract. And people saying, "Oh, they're gonna have slave labor." No, there you would sign a contract saying, "Hey, let's say it's 2 years. You're gonna work here, basically as an internship, I guess, in a kind of way. 2 years, we're gonna educate you. You're gonna learn everything you need to know about accounting." And when you're done, you'll have a job for guaranteed X amount of time, or we'll pay you for your time. We'll keep track of your hours. We'll pay you for your time. One of those two things. Either one of that would happen. Either you would work for free for X number of time, basically as an unpaid internship. You'd learn the ropes of accounting, and when you're done, you'd be guaranteed a job for X amount of time, or they'd have to pay you for how much you worked, and a small severance because you kind of spent your last 2 years of your life thinking that you're going to do this, right? So that would, and the other thing too is that there would be legally binding contracts that would have been signed, so there's no weaseling out of it. And um, obviously everyone would negotiate their own terms into there. So anyone saying, "Oh, what about this?" or "What about that?" There's no whatabouts, because everybody would just write their whatabouts into the contract, so they would be satisfied that their whatabouts would be answered. So there's no debating whether or not that would work, because it would work by definition. And the other option would be, okay, let's pay you probably minimum wage. And how we would recoup our costs is, when you're done, um, you would have to work for us, or they would just recoup the costs that they paid you while they weren't really getting anything out of you down the road, right? So you would work for your minimum wage for whatever, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it took, and then they would say, "Hey, yeah, you're all good to go. You're good enough to be a full-fledged accountant right now, or sorry, going forward." And the normally we pay people whatever X amount. It cost us, this much to give you your education. We're just going to slowly take it out of your paycheck over time, right? So, and like I say, you would be required by contract to fulfill those obligations, right? So, or if you left and let's say you didn't want to do it, you would be required to pay it back down the road either way, right? So that is how things should be done. My guess is that I mean, all things considered, that's how things should go. The problem is that colleges and public schools and the society as a whole is going to keep brainwashing people into thinking that going into six-figure debts is a good idea for jobs that you don't really need a degree for, or jobs that nowhere near make up that amount of money difference. So that is how things should be done in reality. Um, and again, it's something I brought up before, but I just wanted to bring it up again. But again, Thomas Sowell, a very good way of putting it, in that one of the biggest issues of our time is colleges and the ramifications thereof. So basically, that's what I wanted to talk about today. So if you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. If you haven't already, check out my PayPal and email, got linked in the description. Again, I appreciate any donations. And last few things, check me out on Parlay, check me out on Twitter, check me out on BitChute. All those links are in the description, so you can find them all there.